Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's 2020 Budget and Grid Management Charge Process meeting. My name is Isabella Nicosia from ISO Stakeholder Affairs, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. There are a few other ISO representatives in the room. I'll have them introduce themselves starting to my left.
Christina Osborne, ISO Stakeholder Affairs.
Doreen Fender, Senior Manager, Compensation and Systems.
Denise Walsh, Controller.
Thomas Settlers, Financial Planning.
Janet Morris, Executive Director of the Project Management Office.
Ken Kasparian, Manager in the Project Management Office.
Jordan Pinu, Senior Counsel, CISO.
Brian Segazio, CFO.
April Gordon, Director of Financial Planning and Procurement.
Today's call is going to be recorded, and the video file will be available on the process webpage for a limited time. These recordings are for informational and convenience purposes only, and any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without ISO's permission. We'll be taking questions throughout the call today, so if you have a question, you can enter the queue at any time by pressing pound 2 on your telephone keypad. I'd just like to remind everyone to please start by introducing yourself before asking your question. So today we're going to be discussing the budget and GMC rates process, how employee compensation is managed, project release plans, project summaries, and financial summaries, and then we'll go over the 2020 budget calendar and next steps, and then open it up for discussion at the end. So before we get started, I just want to give a brief overview of where we are in the 2020 GMC revenue requirement and rates timeline. Today is the initial 2020 budget stakeholder meeting, and then we'll have another one in November after we finish the internal budget process and post the preliminary draft budget and present that to the board in November. Then following that second call, we'll present the final draft 2020 budget to the board in December and post those rates. And then the new rates will become effective January 1st. So with that, I'll hand it over to April to go over the budget and GMC rates process.
Thank you, Isabella. So as we head into the 2020 revenue requirement, I just wanted to go over some of the principles that we follow to develop that net revenue requirement, and therefore also we hold our principles pretty high as we go into the budget cycle to provide transparency into the budget process with not only our internal stakeholders but our external stakeholders as well. We want to enhance our stakeholder understanding of the components of the revenue requirement. There are 5 components, and we like to break it down in our budget book as well as through our presentations, just so everybody has a better understanding of what's included in each of those components. And then finally, we want to deliver a stable GMC revenue requirement under our $202 million FERC cap, which has allowed us over the last 18 years to provide an average annual increase of the revenue requirement of less than 1%. And we're going to be doing the same going into the 2020 revenue requirement. Some hot topics as we head into that cycle, the reliability services. Next year, we're going to have a full year's worth of expense as well as revenue included in our revenue requirements. Just as a reminder, for 2019, we only have a portion of those expenses and revenues impacting the revenue requirement. The GMC revenue requirement component consists of our O&M budget, which is the largest portion of our revenue requirement. And this is where we hold all of our personnel expenses as well as our non-personnel expenses. The management team has a strong fiscal responsibility to manage their O&M expenses to the budget, and if there are any concerns, they bring it to us so that we can go ahead and adjust it throughout the year so as to maintain our budget. The management team starts with a zero-based budget, and then we manage to that throughout the year. The next component is our debt service. This debt was used to fund our Folsom building. It is fixed until 2039, however, it is callable in 2023. The next component is our cash-funded capital, and each year we ask the board to approve a spend within that cash-funded capital amount, with the reserves going into our long-term reserves. This allows us to maintain a stable revenue requirement year over year. The other component is our other costs and revenues. Now, this is going to be a credit to our revenue requirement, and this includes items such as generator interconnect projects, as well as EIM revenues, interest earnings, as well as California Oregon Intertie. The last component is our operating cost reserve adjustment. Now, this is the component that with our stakeholders. Meaning, in any year in which we are over or under our revenue and or expenses, that net amount is credited back or debited back to the stakeholders in the following year's revenue requirement. In the California ISO history, that's always been a credit. All 5 of those components make up our net revenue requirements, and then we come up with the rates for each of our cost categories. We take a look at our service category percentages as developed as part of our cost of service study, which is providing us a percentage for each of those major cost categories: market services, system operations, and CRR services. And then we take a look at the projected volumes for each of those services to come up with our GMC rates. Going into 2020's revenue requirement, we are going to include the RC funding requirement for the full year. And the RC funding requirement is calculated as an RC percentage of our total net revenue, or our total revenue requirement. The calculation is in front of you. For the cost of for the service of the RC service, it's 9%. And then we'll go ahead and calculate that against the revenue requirements before funding allocation to come up with the RC funding requirement. We'll deduct any minimum charges for TOPs with assets but no loads. And then we'll come up with our net RC funding requirement to collect from the customers. We divide that by the net energy load or the net generation megawatt hours that are submitted to come up with the RC rate going into next year.
So before we move on to the next topic, are there any questions in queue? You can enter by pressing #2.
We currently have one question in the queue.
Okay.
Hello, this is Lauren Perkins on behalf of Silicon Valley Power and Modesto Irrigation District. I had a question on slide 3 going back to the timeline, and I was wondering when CAISO will commence its 2020 cost of service study, call for in the tariff.
Sure. The cost of service study will actually commence the early part of Q2 next year, and it will be put in front of the stakeholders as well as the board going into the later part of next year. Any changes that come out of that cost of service study would be reflected in the 2021 rate.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Are there any other questions?
There are no further questions in the queue.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about how we manage our employee compensation here at the ISO. So the ISO philosophy is continuing on with our competitive pay and our pay for performance philosophy that's unchanged going into the new year. This philosophy is to ensure that we attract, train, motivate, and retain our top talent. So to do that, we have a competitive pay practice, which means that we do biannual salary surveys, benchmarking all our positions here at the ISO and ensure that we are competitive to the market. Within the ISO, we do have our pay for performance philosophy. This is to ensure that we maintain a strong performance management program. We have individuals throughout the organization, all the way up to our executive leadership, who have high-performance goals that are board-approved, and the goals are then cascaded down and tailored to each individual person within the organization. At the end of the year, we do evaluations against those performance metrics that we have to ensure that we're meeting all of the goals that have been set by the board. We do, in our pay for performance philosophy, make sure that we differentiate the merit dollars based on this performance. So again, all the employees here do have individual performance plans. They are aligned to objectives that are measured, and we do shoot for stretch. And we do have ongoing coaching and feedback and support to all our employees throughout the year, not only just at the year end. So For this year, our budgeted merit and promotion pool dollars are under review right now. We do not have a percentage that we have discussed until we get to the point where we're looking at our full budget holistically and we look at the market. We will continue to optimize and utilize all our available merit dollars, but reminding that we are a pay-for-performance organization, and merits are earned based on performance.
Okay. Are there any questions in the queue regarding managing employee compensation?
We've just had one enter the queue.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Lauren Perkins for SVP and MID. Again, does CAISO anticipate a need to increase staffing in 2020, and how much are you projecting?
I'm going to defer that to April.
Thank you, Doreen. At this point, we do not expect additional staff necessary to bring on board.
So it looked like from December 31st, 2018 to June of 2019, the number of active employees increased from 552 to 627. And I was wondering if that was an increase due to CAISO taking on the RC role, or what that staffing increase was due to.
Sure. So in 2018, we had actually put out a budget increase, a slight increase, to go ahead and pick up some pressures that we were feeling in our technology groups and our operations group. And then in 2019, we brought on about 32 employees to assist with the RC functions. We're going to go ahead and cap that going into next year. We do not anticipate having to bring on new employees at this time to support those new services or existing services.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions in queue?
There are no questions at this time.
Now Ken Kasparian will go over the project release plan.
Okay. Morning, everyone. So this first slide is probably the most important slide for you and your teams because it'll allow you to monitor our release plan throughout the year. We'll talk about in the next couple slides. But it basically outlines where this information can be found on our release planning page. There's a link here. Our initiatives milestones. That's up to the first of each month, the multi-year time horizon. And we also have the Market Performance and Planning Forum. It's on a 8-week rotation. That's for technical and release plan updates. The Release Users Group is a bi-weekly release plan. And then the Technical User Group, which is the monthly forum to discuss the technical topics. Next slide talks about where our release plan is sitting right now is for Independent 2020. We've got the ADS replacement, Automated Dispatch System. In spring 2020, we've got 2 EIM entities joining us, Salt River Project, Seattle City Light. Fall 2020, our tentative schedule is at this point that's being worked through impact assessments and starting out the requirements is the commitment cost of default energy bid enhancements, phase 2. Phase 1 is being done in fall of this year. FERC 831 bid cap, this is the piece that got pushed out from 2019 and into 2020. Import bid cost verification, contingency and modeling enhancements for the transmission, energy storage and distributed energy resource, ESDR, phase 3B, dispatch operating target tariff clarification, intertie deviation settlement, and excess behind the meter production. Coming into 2021, we've got 4 EIM entities joining, Public Service Company of New Mexico, Northwest Energy, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Turlock Irrigation District, and for the fall release, the tentative plan that we're going to be working through impact assessments is the day-ahead market enhancement, resource adequacy enhancement, energy storage and distributed energy resource, phase 4, storage of the transmission facility, transmission access charge structure enhancement, And then there's 2 TBD items, or actually 3 that you've seen recently in some of the forums, is the market settlement timeline transformation, hybrid resources, and capacity procurement mechanism for the soft offer cap. These are all aligned with our policy roadmap.
Are there any questions in queue at this time regarding release plans?
There are no questions in the queue.
Okay, thank you. Now April will go over some project summaries.
All right, thank you, April. The next couple of slides refer to the supporting documentation that was provided out on the Calendar site, the closed projects, the active projects, and the proposed projects. To kick it off, the 2019 budget, we were approved to spend up to $22 million, and thus far we have approved funding for $16.2 million worth of projects, which leaves about $5.4 million remaining to be approved or decided upon. The approved projects are included on the active projects list that's out on the website. For 2020, we're looking at a targeted approved spend budget of about $22 million. To date, we have about 86 proposed projects coming to the Project Management Office to be ranked and characterized before we go into 2020. The completed projects from July 2018 through June of 2019 include 27 capital projects. The budgeted costs were at $13.4 million, and we came in about $500,000 less than budget on those projects. The completed projects also include 24 requirements and other projects, and we had a budgeted of about $6.7 million, and we came in $400,000 less on that budget side. All told, we came in $900,000 under budget for our completed projects for the last year. Our active projects as of June 30th include 25 capital projects, also including EMS. And to date, our budgeted costs are $42.2 million. Our period-to-date spend is $17.5 million. The active projects also include 25 requirements and other projects. The budgeted cost on that is $3.2 million, and the period-to-date spend is $900,000. Just as a reminder, we do have a number of EIM implementations coming online between 2020 to 2022. The implementation costs for our EIM customers are funded by our EIM customers, not by the California ISO.
We'll stop again for questions at this time for project summaries. Are there any in the queue?
There's still no questions in the queue.
Okay, thanks, April. All right, now Denise Walsh will go over financial summaries.
Thank you, Isabella. Hi, everyone. This is Denise Walsh, and I will be providing a couple of things in the presentation. The first thing will be just a couple of highlights from the 2018 audited financials, and then I'll follow on with a Q2 June year-to-date 2019 update on revenue, expenses, and capital. So to begin with, the 2018 audited financials were completed back in May, and there are 2 key components of the financials: operating revenues and operating expenses. So in terms of revenues, the revenues finished the year over budget, and that was due to higher GMC revenues as well as higher miscellaneous revenues, including EIM charges and forecasting fees. The operating expenses finished the year under budget. They were lower. We had lower outside legal costs, audit fees, consultant fees, and salaries. Now moving on to the Q2 June year-to-date 2019 operating revenues. This is for GMC and all other miscellaneous revenues. According to the budget and actuals, we are about $1 million over budget currently as at the end of June, and that's based on actuals of $99 million versus a budget of $98 million. This is a brief summary of what's happening to the GMC on a monthly basis from January to June. As of June, the variance was just a little bit under budget, just slightly, but year to date, the cumulative variance is actually over budget by just under $400,000. So looking at the graph, we're right on track there. Moving on to operating and maintenance expenses for the year, the cumulative variance there is under budget by about $3 million, based on the actuals of $88 million versus 88 million versus $91 million. And finally, the capital expenditures for the year, the budget for the year for 2019 is $22 million. The cumulative expenditures so far to date through June are $10.5 million against approved projects of $14.5 million. And that ends my portion of this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Are there any questions in queue regarding financial summaries?
We currently have one question in the queue, and it appears they have just left the queue. Oh, and now they've re-entered.
Okay.
Hello, this is Lauren Perkins for SCP and MID again. I have several questions going back first to the active and completed project slide. My first question for the completed projects, capital project ID number 21329, the Iron Point lobby redesign. Last summer at this budget meeting, it was mentioned that this expense was deferred to accommodate other priorities, such as the RC efforts. And so I'm wondering if the $127,000 final cost is the final cost, or if this is going to be completed at a later date.
At this time, it is completed, and it was taken off the list moving forward.
Okay, thank you. It will not be revisited later, just to confirm?
At this point, no, we don't anticipate it being revisited. However, things may change, but at this point, we don't anticipate it.
Okay. My next question is on the active projects. There was, last week you initially posted a list that had the RC services item broken down into two different capital projects, and I see you've compiled it here into three projects that starts with capital project ID number 12417, and also 21317, and then the third project I didn't see before, but in the list you posted on Friday, they're now into one project, and I'm just wondering, with the remaining $1.3 million left in the budget, will that cover the November onboarding for the next group of RC customers, or will that be a separate project item?
The amounts that were listed for the RC services, hardware, facilities, and non-capital were to target both the onboarding from Group 1 and Group 2. So it's supposed to be holistic in its approach. So to answer your question, yes, the amounts that are remaining will cover the onboarding coming up in November.
Okay. And then going now to the quarterly financials, page 3 of both the Q1 and Q2 reports, there's 4 project classifications, and I'm wondering which of these will cover EDAM. I'd assume it'd be the Grid Evolution Readiness and Regional Innovation Opportunities category, and I see that no amounts in that category have been expended to date.
I'm sorry, which?
Sorry, this is page 3 of, this is both in the Q1 and Q2 quarterly financial report. There's 4 project classifications.
Yeah,
I'm afraid we don't have the quarterly financials here in front of us, but if you can send me a message about your question, I'll be happy to answer it.
Okay.
We don't have the quarterly financials here in front of us.
Okay. Thank you. That is all my questions for now.
Are there any other questions in queue?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay, thanks. Now Thomas will go over the budget calendar and next steps.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go over the key calendar dates and next steps to allow for continued involvement for all of our stakeholders. So right now, as you can see based on the top of the slide, we are in the internal budgeting process. This is the kickoff meeting for that. That will take us through around the October timeframe. And to be involved with that, in addition to this meeting, if you have any additional comments or questions that you would like to submit that maybe we weren't able to raise on the phone here today, please send those to initiativecomments@CAISO.com. We will review those internally, and we will post our responses by August 6th. Moving forward, once our internal process is done, we will post our preliminary draft 2020 budget to our website by November 1st. It's that budget, the draft budget, that will be presented to our Board of Governors during their executive session on November 13th and 14th. After that, we will have another stakeholder call that you can be involved in to discuss that preliminary draft budget, and there will be much more detail available about the budget at that point. We will have another opportunity to receive your stakeholder comments at the same email address as listed above in preparation for the presentation again to the Board of Governors in December on the 18th and 19th, which will be seeking their approval for that budget. After we receive their budget, their approval of the budget, draft budget, we will post our rates, assuming that it is approved, and all other documentation to our ISO website by December 23rd. Do keep in mind that some of these dates are subject to change, but for now, this is our best outlook. And with that, I believe we will turn it over to any questions.
Yeah. So at this point, we'll stop and take some stakeholder feedback and discussion or any other questions anyone may have. So Will, if you could just let us know if anyone enters the queue, that'd be great.
All right, sure thing. And I do see that someone has just entered the queue right now.
Okay.
Hello, this is Lauren Perkins again for SVP and MID. I have a question about the Enhanced Day-Ahead Market EDAM project listing for 2020-21. I'm wondering if CAISO has budgeted any amounts for that item to date?
Janet Morris. No, we have not budgeted for the EDAM as of yet.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
There are currently no questions at this time.
Okay. If there are no further questions, then that concludes today's call. Just a reminder that the comments are due to initiative comments by July 30th, and we look forward to hearing from you. Have a good day.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using AT&T Event Conferencing Enhanced. You may now disconnect.